In 2022, we celebrate 130 years of HBCU football. On December 27th, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the 2022 season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag HBCU130. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
You've got it locked to the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Friday, October 7th. I'm Donal Ware. It's Friday. All right, let's get to it. We've got two HBCU national games of the week. We're going to start with the matchup. Bowie State is at Virginia State. Now, we know Bowie State, the defending CIAA champions 3 times over. Right now, however, Bowie State is 3-2 on the season. When you look at Virginia State and you look at the Trojans overall, the Trojans so far 4-1 on the season, really making some noise. Lost the first game of the season to Lenore Ryan, has won 4 straight games since. You have 2 new head coaches, Kyle Jackson, formerly the recruiting coordinator and assistant coach at Bowie State, takes over the reins for Damon Wilson. Meanwhile, you have Dr. Henry Frazier, who was also an assistant coach at Bowie State on last year, now the head football coach at Fort Valley State. So this promises to be a good one because both of these teams know each other. You look at Virginia State on last week. Virginia State had to really eke out a win last week against Shaw, scored with 12 seconds remaining to get that victory. If you remember, when Bowie State and Shaw played, Shaw won that football game. I mean, that doesn't, that's not the end all be all. Doesn't mean that, that Virginia State is going to lose or going to beat Bowie State. If you look at Virginia State's schedule, okay, lost to Lenore Ryan, beat Bluefield State, who's up and coming, but that's a game that no doubt the Trojans should win. Beat St. Aug's, that's a game that the Trojans should win. Beat Livingstone, that's a game that the Trojans should win. And then beat Shaw, that's not a game. I mean, if that game could have gone either way, and it did, in fact, go to Virginia State. So when I look at Virginia State right now, I mean, Virginia State is scoring some points and holding opponents to less than 17 points a game. That's But again, I mean, Virginia State is definitely getting it done. Virginia State really likes to run the football. I think in the quarterback department, Virginia State is decent. It's better than decent. I shouldn't say that. Virginia State is solid in the quarterback department. And then when I look at the defense, very good defensively, especially against the run. So that's where Virginia State definitely excels. When I look at Virginia State's offense, Darius Hagens has had a nice season. He's averaging 6 yards per carry. He's got 500, almost 600 yards rushing on the season in 5 football games. And then you look at Upton Bailey. He's getting it done at 6.3 yards per carry. So when you look at that running game, it's very, very good. Then I look at Jordan Davis, the quarterback. I mean, he's not completing a high percentage at 57%, but he does have, 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions on the season. And like I said, he's doing an adequate enough job. When I look at this Bowie State defense, okay, Bowie State's defense has been good. Maybe, I mean, it's been good. It's been a good defense. I look at a couple of different things when I look at Bowie State from a defensive perspective. Bowie State likes to stop the run as well. Bowie State is really good against the run and is solid, no question about that, against the pass. I look at this Bowie State defense and Joshua Pryor is out there making plays. We've been talking about Joshua Pryor now for 4 years. He's been really, really good. He was an HBCU All-American in his freshman year. This is the thing. He's getting double teamed a lot this year. But I think when I look at the Bowie State defense as a whole, I think it is very, very solid. Then when I look at Bowie State from an offensive perspective, like this is not, the Bowie State offenses that we've seen in years past, but I do like the quarterback in Dion Golat Jr. Now, this is a kid that transferred in. One of the concerns I have is he's throwing a high number of interceptions on the season. So far, he's got 6 interceptions, but he has thrown 10 touchdowns. He is completing 65% of his passes. I look at the Bowie State rushing attack is solid as well, but this isn't the Bowie State offenses that we've seen certainly in years past. When I go and look at the Virginia State defense, Virginia State is very tough from a defensive perspective. It's a defense that's going to look to stop the run first, no doubt about it. It is solid against the pass, and it's in really a defense that gets after the quarterback, really gets after the quarterback, has a lot of tackles for loss. And when I look at this Virginia State defense, so all of that to say, and I think you can look at all of these things, but this is a big game because the winner of this game is still in the race for the Northern Division crown in the CIAA. I think the loser is out pretty much, right? Because Virginia Union is playing well. So the loser of this game would now have one loss in the Northern Division with the way that Virginia Union is playing. I just think that this game, whoever loses this game will be out. You look at we talked about the matchups with offense and defense for both teams. I think you really have to factor in the coaching, right? Both of these coaches know each other very, very well. Okay. And I think that's going to be a big factor in this football game. I actually like Virginia State a little bit better in this football game. I like the fact that Virginia State does a better job of protecting. The football is opportunistic. And so I'm going to go with Virginia State over Bowie State in Petersburg. This is a home game for Virginia State. The other HBCU national game of the week, Florida A&M and South Carolina State. This game is in Orangeburg, South Carolina. It's a rivalry game. It's an old MEAC game. So when I look at South Carolina State, South Carolina State got off to the slow start on last year. Slow start this year, 1-3, tough schedule. South Carolina, the loss last Thursday, the loss to UCF, the loss to A&T, a win over Bethune-Cookman. It's been a tough schedule, no doubt, for South Carolina State. That said, I don't like what I'm seeing per se from South Carolina State. It just looks a little bit different. I had a chance to call that game against A&T, and while A&T is a solid team, I mean, I just thought South Carolina State on paper, probably was the better team, I thought, coming into that football game. But Corey Fields just hasn't gotten it done from a quarterback perspective. And if you looked in the box score from the loss against South Carolina, Tyrese Nick played in that game. Now, I've seen both of these guys play. Corey Fields played better in the A&T game than he had played overall. But I thought that we may see Tyrese Nick play. Now, I don't know all of the parameters behind Tyrese Nick playing against South Carolina. Maybe, but I'll tell you what, if I look at the numbers from the South Carolina game, they weren't good with respect to Corey Fields. Okay. The running game hasn't really gotten it going. Kendrell Flowers was out due to concussion protocol against North Carolina A&T. But if I look at that South Carolina State defense, I mean, they had 2 interceptions against South Carolina. And I'm going to tell you, BJ Davis is the real deal. Again, a lot of these South Carolina State kids make their names against FBS programs and big FBS programs. And I think we already knew who BJ Davis was, but he had a really good football game against South Carolina. He had a fumble, either a fumble recovery or a forced fumble in the game. He had like 6 solo tackles. That guy can play, and he's all over the field. And I really like his play. When I look at Florida A&M as a whole, and let's start with the offense. Jeremy Musa, solid. Listen, Florida A&M did what it was supposed to do against Mississippi Valley State. It's been on a bit of a roll. Florida A&M is back on a little bit of a roll right now after a slow start to the season, including that blowout loss against Jackson State. Jeremy Musa, solid. Xavier Smith, the wide receiver, starting to kind of get back into the mix. He had 13 receptions, 2 touchdowns in the victory over Mississippi Valley State. It's a good Florida A&M defense. Isaiah Land, he doesn't have the numbers, but that doesn't mean anything. The offenses are playing him a lot different. He's seeing double teams, but remember, he had to kind of get back into the flow after missing that first game against North Carolina. So my prediction for this game, I like Florida A&M to go into Orangeburg and win the football game over South Carolina State in an old MEAC rivalry. So those are my thoughts on the HBCU national games of the week. You can let me know what you think. Hit me up via Twitter at BOXTOROW, BOXTOROW. If you've noticed, all week I've been wearing all Morgan State University shirts. That's because it's homecoming in Baltimore. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a grad. I will be in Baltimore, and that's another solid game. Morgan State's on the rise. Norfolk State's looking for its first win of the season. That's a MEAC game. I'm looking forward to being in Baltimore. Don't forget to tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can find us on our website at BOXTOROW.com, also on iHeartMedia.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you can watch the HBCU Football Daily Podcast on the BOXTOROW YouTube page. Enjoy whatever game you may watch, whatever game you may go to. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk with you on Monday.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at BOXTOROW.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on BOXTOROW with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BOXTOROW for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.